Qantas today announced their record underlying profit, $2.5 billion before tax. But I wonder if it's been taking Australians for a ride to earn that. And I don't mean taking us for a ride in a good way, taking us for a ride with the help of its mates in the Albanese government. Here's the Qantas boss, Alan Joyce, today saying, domestic flights are now back to where they were before the pandemic lockdowns, great. But for international flights, he can't get his planes back in service fast enough since the lockdown to meet all the demand.
That's brought our domestic capacity back above pre-COVID levels and international to around 80% of pre-COVID levels. We expect international will be back at 100% by the middle of next year, which is the fastest that we can get some of these large wide bodies back through maintenance and back into service.
But given that, why did the Albanese government recently knock back a request from Qatar Airways to put on 21 more international flights a week? Because those extra flights would have cut the high fares that we've had to pay and added $500 million to our economy by bringing in more tourists, according to some estimates. Now, the reasons that Transport Minister Catherine King has given for this ban have been all over the shop. I can't make head nor tail of it. Oh, it's because of national security. No, it's because of emissions. No, finally, it's because Qantas has just purchased brand new planes, and that's at a significant cost. All this protection for Qantas, when the Australians have just given that airline a record profit by paying higher airfares. Now, is this the government looking after Qantas and its unions there? Is it mates rates for an airline that pampers our politicians? Hello, and its luxury chairman's lounge even gives membership there to Anthony Albanese's 23-year-old son. And it also gets sweet with the Labor government about backing the Prime Minister's pet cause, The Voice, even if most of his passengers don't. Look, it all seems far too matey. But Alan Joyce today denied that the Prime Minister was doing him favours by saying no to Qatar.
And in fact, Singapore Airlines and China Southern have added more seats in the last few weeks than Qatar was saying they were going to do. And they're only 2 of 52 carriers that are adding capacity to Australia at the moment.
So you don't think this was the government protecting Qantas?
Well, we have so much capacity being added. There's a flood of capacity coming on. This is not about protecting Qantas. There's a lot of other things that the government consider when it negotiates bilateral rights.
Joining me is the country's top finance writer, Terry McCrann of the Herald Sun. Terry, great to see you again. How much of this record profit comes from the Albanese government looking after Qantas?
Well, I don't think you could quite say that, Andrew. I mean, let's go back over the COVID years where Qantas lost some billions of dollars, even with the money they got from JobKeeper and other handouts. And obviously, they had to not only make a good profit this year, but they had to try and claw back some of that red ink that they started the year with. But you're right in the point that on the Qatar decision, yes, this was about protecting Qantas, obviously, and Catherine King made that quite clear, if rather chaotically in the end, that this was about helping Qantas have a softer ride through this period. But I think you will see competition come back into 2024, and we've already seen airline fares fall quite sharply in the last 3 to 6 months. So, yes, there's still this perception in Canberra that Qantas is our airline, and they've got our unions members working for it, as opposed to those terrible foreign airlines. So that's still an underlying reality in terms of the way they approach making Qantas subject to competition.
And tough on Virgin, they come second. The Treasurer today released the intergenerational report, Terry, looking ahead at the challenges we'll face over the next 40 years. I said earlier in the show, it's totally beaten up the global warming threat. And I don't know, it's saying now, bad news, the government faces decades of rising costs to pay for the military, to pay for all those extra old people we're going to get. And it's going to have trouble, oh dear me, to find the taxes for it all. So where's all that going, do you think?
Well, to start with, Andrew, it's 300 pages of the bleeding obvious. We know that we're going to get older. We know that we're going to have a bigger bill for the disability scheme. We know that we're going to have much higher old age pensions. We know that defence expenditure is going up. We didn't really need this sort of report to tell us that. But more fundamentally, Andrew, this report is an exercise in analytical idiocy at a level I've never seen before. To think that you can project 40 years meaningfully into the future. And let me just give you two facts from previous intergenerational reports. The first one back in 2002, said our population would reach this huge figure of 25 million people by 2042. We actually got there in 2018. It was only 24 years late in terms of its forecast. And this report comes 2 years after the last intergenerational report, which in the body of the report says, you know that report we put out 2 years ago? Well, nothing in it has got any relevance anymore. We have to dump all those forecasts and we're going to start again. So, I mean, the idea, and then on top of that, you add this whole climate change lunacy. It's lunacy in spades, lunacy on steroids. On the one hand, we're going to be destroyed by rising temperatures. On the other hand, the world's going to do something about it, and we have to join in, and we'll make trillions of dollars by getting rid of all that cheap coal-fired power and embracing this even cheaper, which we know isn't, wind and solar. I mean, the combination is just utterly idiotic, Andrew.
Oh, look, it's incredible. Punting that much money on the miracle green fuels like hydrogen, which might happen or maybe not. Might be another thing like those wave generators the government funded that sank or had to be scrapped. But what this rhetoric tells me, Terry, I mean, it's just so clear. The stage 3 tax cuts next year for middle and higher income earners that have had to wait years. Stage 1 has happened for lower income earners. Stage 2 has happened. Stage 3 people have had to wait for years while bracket creep goes up and up and up. And it looks like, I think, it will not happen.
Well, they're certainly on life support, Andrew. I think you'd say that. And I mean, I think we might have seen the best of the budget, the miracle surplus that we had last year. Thanks to what, Andrew? Thanks to all those exports of coal and iron ore and gas, which we're going to abandon. But of course, we're going to replace it with wind and solar exports. I mean, seriously?
For heaven's sake, Terry, it's just. We're going to look back at this. I mean, books can be written about how a nation lost. It's like the great tulip craze that went through Europe and went bust, and the South Sea Island bubble. This will be another one of them. Terry McCrann, thank you so much for your time.